So welcome everyone to Crestview Public Adjusters podcast interview. I'm Josh Berkowitz, co-founder and CEO of Crestview Public Adjusters, here with Jack Schwartz. I would like to give an intro on myself and have Jack give an intro on himself. So we represent first-party policyholders on insurance claims towards insurance, specializing in property damage, also cyber insurance, and just being an advocate for policyholders. And thanks for coming to this, podcast interview. Hopefully we'll have more series. I'd like to who Jack is and who the expert is.
Great. Thank you again for having me. I really appreciate it. It's an honor to be here. I am the owner and president of ITC Risk Advisors. It's an independent, outsourced insurance consultancy that provides insurance guidance and expertise to business owners and insurance buyers.
Awesome. And today we're going to be discussing, a number of things. The hot topics of the day are cyber insurance, also why it's so important for real estate owners to try their best to make sure that their renters get renters insurance, and discussing other topics in the insurance space that are relevant to the viewers here. We've been connected on LinkedIn for a couple of years. I see every day you post something on LinkedIn. How did you get into that? And like to hear what your tip of the day is today.
Sure. So I was on LinkedIn for a while. But they refer to us lurkers, just reading people's stuff, never posting or anything. At some point about 3.5 years ago, I was attending a real estate conference and they had a session on social media. And there was a speaker up there. Her name is Beth Azor. Shout out to Beth. She's a rock star on LinkedIn. She's a commercial real estate agent in Florida. She was encouraging everybody in the audience to, if you're not posting daily on LinkedIn, you're not getting the most out of what you could be out of LinkedIn. And I said, okay, I'm going to start posting and see what happens. I just came up with the insurance tip of the day, that line, and I ran with it. And in the beginning, it was easy for me to post because I had plenty of knowledge and insurance topics to discuss. And it just evolved. It got me a lot of connections and followers on LinkedIn, and then I continued doing it because it started generating business for me, and it's become an official prospecting and sales.
That's great. So you're here today at our first podcast. What is the tip of the day today that you're going to be posting about?
So because I've been doing it for 3.5 years, and I try not to re-up a topic. I try to come up with something new. So usually now, the way I come up with ideas is when whatever is happening during the day that comes up and I say, oh, that's a good one. So I haven't had anything yet today. But if you want, for the audience, I would say for those business owners, when you select an insurance broker, do your due diligence. Don't just take a friend or a neighbor or just because somebody makes a nice presentation. There are differences between insurance brokers. Some are better at service, some have better resources. There's a broker for each business, and some of them are better than others.
Sure. No, that's really important. It's something I think we're gonna, talk about. So one of the topics that we, are relevant to our, viewers and myself as, running Crestview Public Adjusters, we're first-party claim advocates, represent policyholders on first-party claims against their insurance. We don't only represent policyholders with property damage. We also started more recently, over the past 1.5, 2 years, helping out owners that have cyber insurance and helping them out. So we'd love to discuss that with you and learn a little bit about what you have to tell us about what you're seeing changing in the cyberspace today.
For sure. It makes sense to go into the cyberspace because claims there are evolving and they're big and people don't know what to do with it, and they do need advocates, because when you're dealing with an insurance company that has an expertise in handling claims and they're the behemoth, so to speak, they know what they're doing. They have top experts on their side. An insurance buyer, the insured, should have an advocate and an expert on their side because they can be taken advantage of without somebody on their side such as yourself. For sure.
And are you working with specific insurance brokers that specialize in insurance cyber, or is most brokers capable of selling cyber insurance to the policyholder?
So insurance brokers in general can sell pretty much any product that somebody needs. I prefer, when I can, to use somebody that has an expertise in a certain line of coverage or in a certain industry, because they usually bring something to the table and they have more knowledge on what policy language, when you're getting into nuances of coverage. They usually have more expertise in that area. So if I had the choice, I try to go to somebody that has more expertise, but it doesn't always work like that, because sometimes clients have their brokers they want to use, and I'll work with whoever that they want me to.
Sure. Yeah, we're still seeing an influx of people calling us on a daily basis with just questions about their cyber insurance. Some people don't have insurance, some people do, and currently working on a couple different, cyber, attacks that we're representing the policyholder. And it's definitely a little different than representing, someone who has a fire or flood in their property. But at the end of the day, we are their quarterback to represent them, make sure they have the right direction, when handling the claim. So, it's definitely interesting for us. So another topic I just wanted to, or do you want to mention something on that topic?
When you're dealing with cyber, are you seeing them with certain industries? Meaning, property claims are usually more in the real estate side.
Sure.
So everybody who has buildings may need a public adjuster for property, but when it comes to cyber, are you seeing it in certain industries?
We're from our perspective, we're getting calls or hearing about people who are getting, cyber attacked. We had a real estate title company that we worked on about a year and a half ago. We're still working on that. A large real estate title company that got hacked, so they kind of went out of business overnight. We had another Amazon seller who got hacked, and working with a telecommunications company currently. So all across the spectrum, but I think and then we always hear from different real estate owners that, hey, wire transfer fraud is something big, but that's common, but we haven't handled any of that. But that's I'd say it's across the spectrum right now. There's not necessarily one industry that's getting hit the most. Although if you read about it, there probably are,
And that's good, but there's a misnomer out there that unless you're in the technology space, or maybe you're working online, Amazon, etc., those companies need cyber insurance. But let's say a real estate company or whatever it is, a lot of people think, how are we going to get affected
Sure.
by a cyber claim? So I think. So it's good to hear that people, you're dealing with in many industries. I'll just share with you a story about maybe 10 years ago. I was interviewing, I was looking to go in-house as a risk manager, and I was interviewing at a large real estate company in Manhattan. They had an in-house risk manager, and she wanted to hire an assistant. And during our conversation, I brought up cyber insurance, and she looked at me, I'll never forget this, and she said, "We're a real estate company. We don't need cyber insurance." And I couldn't say much because she was the one hiring, but I thought she was misunderstanding the cyber insurance. I think everybody needs it, whether you're a real estate company, you're using computer system, you have your technology, whatever, you could get hacked. You're storing a lot of people's information, or your tenants, or whatever it is. Most businesses today rely heavily on technology.
Sure.
If they're hacked, or if there's a ransomware, it could really affect their business.
Yeah, and the most important thing is we speak to a lot of different vendors in the cyberspace is most people are calling a risk manager or a insurance broker only after they got hacked. So they might not have insurance at the time. It's very like reactionary. It's not like proactive trying to get insurance. So that's what we're trying to like educate everyone who we deal with and say, listen, you might not be top of mind to buy cyber insurance, but make sure you're buying it. You don't want to have to deal with it. So it's important to keep that in mind.
I have a relatively new client. They have their own risk manager, and they're using me to supplement that. And she told me, whenever I was suggesting some new policies that they don't have, she said the way we work here is we wait till we have a claim, and then they realize the importance of it.
Sure.
And they had that with cyber. They had a claim a year or two ago. And they said, okay, now we need to buy it. The problem with that approach is, and I understand why people don't want to spend the money, is it's going to be a lot more expensive for them and harder for them to get the insurance once they have the claim.
Yeah, makes sense. So I've put out a post a couple of days ago. I got some comments for people that wanted to discuss certain things. So I wanted to bring up some, hot topics that some of our clients and just real estate owners have interest in us talking about. One thing that's really important is why it's so important for real estate owners to make sure that their tenants have renter's insurance. And what kind of benefit is out there for a real estate owner if they do make sure that their tenants, have renters insurance?
And that's a great question. And honestly, it would be great if all tenants had insurance, because there's a lot of value to that, especially as the landlord. In today's industry, the insurance market right now is going through a hard cycle. There are not a lot of carriers writing real estate, especially multifamily, especially if you're dealing with New York and in our area. Claims impacts their ability to get insurance and get reasonably priced insurance. So when a tenant has insurance, whether it's property or liability, that they could look to respond to a claim before the landlord's insurance gets triggered, that insulates and protects the landlord's insurance from claims, and hopefully it'll protect them from the premium hikes and the loss experience.
And is there any benefit? Let's say I have a building with 20 tenants and I ensure that all of my tenants have insurance. Is there any benefit on the property side?
For sure. If you can do it, and most landlords tell me they can't get their tenants to purchase, even though there are programs out there, it could be like $10 a month. Even just to get $100,000 limit is an extra protection, because if you're dealing with a garden style apartment and they're barbecuing and it causes a fire and it spreads, their $100,000 of liability plays a role.
So just so it's clear, if you have a building, we see this all the time. We'll come across a fire, and unfortunately, a lot of times in New York City, the tenants, even could be a high-end area of New York City. We had a fire in Upper West Side a couple of years ago where 10 apartments, beautiful apartments, not one renter had renter's insurance, and that's, for us, terrible thing to see. But we're helping out the owner, still trying to help out the tenants, and it's really unfortunate. But if I have that 10-unit building and then I ensure that all the renters insurance are buying renters insurance, is there any benefit to the other policy, like in terms of premiums?
It'll definitely help in marketing the policy.
Sure.
Because carriers would be more interested in insuring a landlord whose tenants have coverage.
Okay.
Because then it creates a greater distance for the carrier to get involved with the claim, because there's other policies that may play a role prior to theirs.
Sure. And then you mentioned there's sometimes could be specific products also for the owner. Not every owner would want to buy renter's insurance, but there's products also.
There are programs out there. I know there are new programs coming all the time. People reach out to me selling these tenant type of policies. There's plenty out there, yeah. And
sure.
It's worthwhile to look at. It's not expensive. It's just people don't want to spend the money, especially in this economy.
So next question for you is something we get all the time is, we have an insurance claim. Hey, a lot of times people call us for different things to review their claim, review their policy. We have a claim on our building. Our deductible is $50,000. Maybe the claim is $300,000. We're not sure we want to put a claim in because our premiums are going to go up. Love to hear what you have to say, because everyone gives their own answer, but you as an expert, love to hear how that works and if that's true.
Yeah, well, it's a complicated question because it can vary and a lot of factors can play a role. But an example where somebody has a $50,000 deductible and they have a $300,000 claim, it makes sense to put in the claim because that's a significant money out of pocket, unless the client wants to. But that's why you buy insurance. You buy it for the big claims, and if $300,000 is deemed a big claim for that particular insured, which it should be if they're only taking out a $50,000 deductible, then I would encourage them to put the claim in and let it. Hopefully they'll get covered for everything that they should, and hire a public adjuster as needed. Because yes, their premiums are going to go up. It's going to make it's harder for them to get renewals, because in today's market it's very difficult, but that's why you buy insurance for it.
So is there a difference if you have a claim on commercial versus residential? Your premiums are going to go up on both?
Right now, increases are everywhere.
I know they're going up, but let's say for a claim, that's what a lot of times people are asking us those questions. Are the underwriters looking at it the same way?
So there's a different perspective. So when a company has one big claim, that's usually considered an outlier, and in a soft market, it's not paid too much attention to. In a hard market, even one claim is given more attention to. But a client with a lot of small claims, that's more of an issue, because then underwriters look at them as somebody who has a propensity for claims, and they don't want to deal with that. They're going to lose money on the account. So if one outlier claim, even if it's $1 million claim, it's better for a client than 10
Small, yeah. Like we always, people always come to us with like either reviewing their commercial or residential situation, and if they have like a small claim, we try to push them away and say, why don't you hold this up for a larger claim? And it usually comes back to help them because they'll sometimes call us back months later with something else.
And also,
but we try to stay away from that.
The claim occurs also matters. If it's a month before their renewal, it could really affect their negotiating their renewal.
Mm-hmm.
A client that has a claim a week before the renewal, if they can, I would suggest maybe holding off on making the claim, even if they want to make the claim. I've been in the industry for 16 and a half years. I don't know the process that public adjusters go through. I don't get involved with that usually. When I hand it off to public adjuster, I let them do their thing. They're the expert, the same way I hope nobody bothers me. So why don't you walk us through the process of a claim, how you manage it, what goes into it?
So that's a really good question. There's a lot that goes into our side of the business. One thing just to note is every adjuster, even on the insurance company side, there's a different process for every company. So, for us, the most important thing about any claim is the policy. Policy is most important. So we request all the policy information, the whole docket. For people who don't know what the docket is, that's just the full, 200-page, policy. We like to review all of the endorsements before we even get to the property and go to the we set up a time to, inspect the property. We go there, we have different, whether it's a fire or flood, whatever type of losses, we bring the experts, either ourselves or bring the experts to come in to evaluate the loss. Using thermal imaging cameras, using 3D, Matterport technology to document and sketch the whole property, whatever we need to assess the loss. The way we look at it, or we're the quarterback of the claim. So if we need to bring in a expert engineer, expert roofer, we're going to bring it in. We're not going to assume that we are the expert. We're going to bring them into our team. So we approach it we approach the claim as a team. Come to the property, do that initial evaluation, have a conversation with the owner. Sometimes we come to situations where it doesn't make sense to the owner to open up a claim because their deductible is too high or the claim value is too low. So have that conversation with the owner. For us, setting the expectations with the client is the most important. So making sure they understand what they're up against, what kind of claim this is going to be. And what I tell clients all the time is the reason why hiring a public adjuster, a lot of people market themselves and market public adjusters as people, maximizing the claim value. Yes, there's an incentive for a public adjuster to get the highest amount, but really it's managing the claim. Understanding the back and forth with insurance, understanding what is in your policy that you could actually ask for. There's sometimes special endorsements that give you, coverages for certain things that owners had no idea. So that's what the value that we bring to the table. Like looking through the policy and then looking at the property and seeing how the two, coincide together and try to manage the claim like that. And we handle, we take the risk out of the owner's hand. The owner doesn't have to meet with the insurance company. We, handle all the meetings and back and forth. Obviously, it could take anywhere from a commercial claim could take anywhere from 3 months to a year, depending on the type of claim.
And I assume it moves along faster when there's an adjuster.
Sure.
On the insured side.
I'll tell you right now, from a live examples, we're handling claims in Hurricane Ian, and we have claims like down in Florida. So we have claims that client was getting no response from the insurance company, and they hire us as their insurance adjuster, and it just gets sometimes we know people at the insurance companies where it gets a higher attention. We know that we could make certain phone calls to get the attention. So it definitely makes things go faster, but that's not it's hard to make that a selling point because sometimes you can't tell the client it's going to move faster because sometimes it doesn't. But the insurance companies, most people look at us, most people think that we are an adversary of the insurance company, but we have good relationships with some of the adjusters and the insurance company. Sometimes, believe it or not, they're happy that there's a public adjuster on the file, especially a large commercial claim. They'd rather be dealing with a, competent public insurance adjuster than an owner and all the different parts of the ownership and management. It's too confusing. We kind of are the quarterback and relay all the information to them.
And that makes sense. You mentioned a roofer. One of the things that I see a lot, especially in Florida and in the South, is many policies now have ECV valuation on roofs, meaning depreciated value. Are you seeing that a lot on policies?
So we are, depending on the age of the roof. Sometimes we're seeing it now in Florida especially. they're changing up the policies and making it that, if it's over, if it's past a certain year, they're doing that. But that leads me to another question for you, actually, because we're seeing this more and more, that now people are trying to pay less for their premiums to have like a bigger wind deductible. And how important is it for owners to, understand what's in their policy and understand that it might make more sense to pay a little more money to have a lower deductible?
Yeah, and I think they generally understand that. The problem is that the premiums in Florida, Louisiana, Texas, etc., are just ballooning, and in order to keep their costs down and keep their properties generating profit, they're taking these risks that they wouldn't have necessarily taken in the past. Where I'm seeing clients now take the 10% wind deductible,
Sure.
Just to keep their costs down in premium. Hope an event doesn't happen. Look, I had a client 2 weeks before the hurricane in Tampa take a higher deductible.
Okay, so
And 2 weeks later, boom, they got hit. Those are the risks you take, but I understand where they're coming from. They're trying to keep maintaining profit. So let me turn the tables on you. Tell us a little bit about public adjusters, how they work a claim, what goes into the process, what benefits it is for the insured to use a public adjuster.
Sure. It's a really great question, Jack. So one thing I want to educate everyone out there is the insurance companies hire experts to represent them. So most people aren't aware that you are entitled to hire someone to represent you. So as a public adjuster, we only represent first-party claims, just the policyholder. We're not allowed to, get hired by the insurance company. So when you're dealing with a large commercial claim and the insurance company brings out their expert, you want to have someone at the same level playing field that understands the dynamic of back and forth. So that's one of the most important things that we bring to the table, our expertise when dealing with, the insurance, also the real estate and things like that.
And that makes perfect sense. Are there adjusters that work both sides?
So there are independent adjusters that could work for different insurance companies, but you're not allowed to be, it's conflict of interest to be a public adjuster and an independent adjuster.
Because on the legal side, I see where there are law firms that will work for the insured and work for the insured. Obviously not on the same claim, but they'll play both sides.
Sure, yeah. So as public adjusters, we don't play both sides, but there are probably I think I've come across, attorneys that do that, but strictly us, our license only allows us to represent the policyholder.
What's an insured's reaction when you tell them they don't have coverage, their deductible is so high, or there's something in their policy that's really going to affect their claims?
It's a really good question also, because we have to date, thank God, really a high success rate of taking claims on that are covered. So because we do all the research and due diligence before that we take on the claim, so we'll read through a policy, understand the facts of the claim, and then have a call or meeting with the owner and say, hey, okay, this is the success, of the claim. And this is really in instances when people call us before they even are calling the insurance company, because the best time to get a public adjuster involved is before you call the insurance company, let us come out there, evaluate it, so we could bring the insurance company through the process. But when we have to tell a client that, hey, this is what your deductible is, because they didn't even know what their deductible is, or two, that this is not going to be a claim, this is not going to be covered, it's not a good conversation to have. But I'd rather be having that, day 3 than try to say, 2 months in, tell them that's denied. But it's all about setting an expectation.
You come up with so many different types of policies that you're looking at. Do you see differences between different brokers, or when a client has a consultant, do you see differences in their policy forms?
That's a good question. So especially because got an expert here today. No, definitely. I think that the more eyes you have looking at a policy, whether it being like one specific policy or a master policy, there are just more coverages, and you're going to have more comprehensive coverage, and you're not going to forget about little things that could be really important down the line. And I think for the right client, like, it makes sense to have a risk manager, and we are always reviewing policies. So it just depends on the client, depends on the policy, because we have clients who probably need a risk manager, but they don't even know. So they have like 50 or 60 buildings, in New York City, they have a master policy with certain insurance companies, and they either have their value of the property is too low, or their deductibles are too high, or the third one is in some of the commercial policies now, people have like
they don't have blanket limits or whatever.
exactly.
It's funny because most businesses don't realize that the insurance broker most of the time is not reading their policies.
Sure.
Their focus is on selling the policies, and the buyer is not reading the policy, because even if they wanted to, they may not understand the type of language that insurance companies are using. It's a legal contract, but it also has its specific nuances specific to the insurance industry. So just for example, even if you hire a lawyer to read the policies, unless they're a lawyer that focuses on insurance, the term personal injury in law means one thing. In insurance, it means something totally different. It doesn't
Sure.
refer to bodily injury. And lawyers don't even know that oftentimes. I see that in contracts all the time when I review insurance contracts.
So that leads me, I have a question, this reference this. What is the ideal client that makes sense for them to think about, hey, I need to have a risk manager? Is it a certain amount of units? Is it a certain type of portfolio?
Really, it could be any size client, any type of client, any industry. Because if you have somebody on your side reading your policies, making sure everybody's selling the policies and dealing with your policies are doing the job that they should be doing, and dealing with claims, etc. But most of the time, smaller companies just don't have it within their budget to do that. So they rely on their broker, and hopefully they have the right broker and they're doing a good job for them. So it's usually middle market to larger clients. The larger clients oftentimes have their own in-house risk management teams on their own. So I think majority of the time it's mid-sized companies that are
Sure.
hiring outsourced risk managers.
This is another question in reference to this type of client. We got this question asked a couple months ago, but we constantly get the same idea. Let's say someone has a portfolio of a couple thousand apartments. Should they get a master policy over that? And is there any benefit, or should they just get one policy? What that means is, instead of having, if you have 40 different buildings or 10 different buildings, to have a policy specific to each building with the different insurance carrier, you can have a master policy to oversee all the one portfolio.
If you'd asked me this question 3 years ago, I would say without a doubt, master policy is much better all the way. You get better coverage, you usually get better pricing. You can negotiate more. You're negotiating from a higher level of strength because you have more assets that you're bringing to the table, and you're more attractive to insurance companies. In today's hard insurance market, I still think you're getting better coverage with a master policy. Having said that, the price difference sometimes now, the individual buildings sometimes can be priced much better on individual policies. And because of the pricing increase in the industry, many more insureds are willing to go for the price rather than the breadth of coverage because of the disparity. So it really depends. I still would encourage master policies because overall they're getting better coverage, undoubtedly. Having said that, one of the arguments against a master policy has always been a claim at one building will affect the premiums for everybody else. It usually is not, a large enough portfolio, or in a soft market, it usually doesn't make that much of a difference, and it's worth it for the coverage. In today's market, it makes a lot more difference. A claim can really affect. So I do see a lot more clients going the.
So it's interesting. Makes sense, because let's say you have a master policy, then you have a couple claims that could affect the whole policy, rather than just being one specific building. It's specific to that and doesn't affect the rest of the portfolio.
On the other hand, I have a client that has one property who he's paying through the roof on insurance, and he now wants to look at a master policy because maybe it'll help that location out and bring the cost down for that location. So you could look at it from many different perspectives.
Got it. Any questions for us? Any more questions? Turn the table here.
One of the common perceptions about a public adjuster is that they jack up claims, and it's just going to affect our loss experience. So why would we want to do it? The insurance company will pay me. We know what limit we have on the building, etc. How do you address that?
Another good question. We do get that a lot. The purpose of having insurance and having a policy is to put you back to pre-loss condition. So if you're going to let the insurance company run the process, most of the time they're not going to put you back to pre-loss condition from our experience. So we just show them the best way to show them is to show them references of people we worked with, other, institutional real estate players or just other, real estate owners that we've worked with, and say, how is the experience working with Crestview? Like, did they put you back to pre-loss condition? I tell people all the time, you don't hire a public adjuster to get you 20, 30% more than what you're owed. We're only getting hired to get you back to pre-loss condition. So that is a misconception, and we just fight it with those real life examples.
Makes sense. I'm an advocate of a public
Yeah.
adjuster. I see the benefit.
And sometimes we tell people don't hire us. It just depends on, not always, we don't take on every claim. It has to be specific. Obviously, usually it's a certain dollar amount, but sometimes it could be smaller dollar amount we're able to help them. Sometimes it's not complicated. But the best time to hire a public adjuster is from the beginning, not like during the claim. We can work on claims during the claim. We get calls all the time, but the best time is in the beginning, so we run the process and bring the insurance company, through the loss.
I see something similar on my side. Hey, a week before renewal, hey, could you help us? Really, you should have came to me, 2 months, 3
Sure.
months before. Let's do the entire process from the get-go. It's more beneficial for the insured that way.
Exactly. You give them better direction, better help. Thanks everyone for coming to the podcast today. Hope you are more educated on cyber insurance, renters insurance, and the different topics we spoke about. And, really thankful for Jack for joining us on the first podcast here.
It was great. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
I know it was a long trip from where you're, coming from, but hopefully, in the future, if you ever need any, risk management help, I could highly recommend him. And if, hopefully you never need us as a public adjuster, but, we're here if you need us.